Okay, let's talk about the yield keyword when we use generator functions. And this is not about the yield star. That's for the next video. Okay, so as you can see here, it does three things. And what not a lot of people know is when you do like a for of loop or any loop, it's actually internally just looking for a yield keyword or the dot next value. Let's go over these three things. It sends out a value. Let me paste this in. So here I created a generator function, right? Now, just having yield will make the return value iterable. Therefore, we can use a for of loop. So here you can see that for of is actually just looking for the yield value. If I change this to 11, you'll say 11 over here. Right? Now, that covers number one, it sends out a value. What does number two mean? It creates a pause point. Let me just change this. Now, let's do const count is equal to the return value of counter, right? And then we can do on the right, we can do count.next. This creates a pause point. It says, hey, the first value of yield is 11. If we call next again, it will yield the 55 and so on. Okay, that's cool and all, but what if down here we have const x is equal to yield? Let's do 100. Okay, so what's going to happen when I call next? It yields the 11. Now, if I call it again, is it going to yield 100? Let's see. Yes, it does, right? So you can assign yield to a variable, and when you do a for of loop or call next, it will still display whatever is after yield. Okay. And then next, 55 and 3 and so on. Okay, so what if down here I do console.log x? What are we going to get? Next, 11, 100. We get undefined. Why is that? Why is x not 100? Well, that's because right now our yield is not receiving any value. How can we give the value to yield? Well, you can actually pass in an argument in your next, right? But when should we pass it in? Well, let's go over this. When we call it the first time, whoops, not get that next, it should be count.next, right? So if we call it the first time, we get 11. Now, when we call it the second time, we get the value of 100. Okay. Now, when we call it the third time, if we pass it in, let's just say this is x. Okay, we get console.log, this is x. But how did that actually work? Well, after we call it the second time and it yields 100, the third time when we call next, JavaScript's going to say, oh, hey, you're assigning a variable to the yield. So I'm going to look for if there's any argument inside, and if there is, I will assign that value to x. Okay? But if not, then I won't, and it will just be undefined. Okay, so what about this? What about const ARR is equal to yield 1, yield 2, and yield 3. Okay, so now, and then after this, let me console.log ARR. So now if we do count.next, we get 1, 2, 3. But look, our array is all undefined because we're not passing in values. So let's try to pass in values. Okay. So you cannot pass in a value on the first next call because you're just starting up the generator. Oh, I forgot I have to refresh. So I call it, we get 1. So we get yield 1. Now, on the next call, JavaScript is expecting an argument to be passed. Okay, so it sees the yield and it says, okay, whatever argument you pass will be the value of this array index. I'll just say this, index 0. Okay, then once we pass that in, it yields the next value, which is 2. And now on the next call, it's expecting another argument to be passed in to replace this value, yield 2 right here, index 1. Okay, then it yields 3, and now the next call will be expecting a value right here. I'll just call this index last. Okay, and then when we console.log, we see that it's filled in. Cool, right?